Hi everyone, Eugene here with Darkroom Software. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the different sharing options that you have within Darkroom Booth 3. Now, although I would consider printing to be a share option, we're going to be more focused on the file sharing options. That would be photo to phone, photo email, Dropbox, and event gallery. So this is a video more on what you can do, not so much how to set it up, but I'll show you where you can find more information on the setup instructions for each one of these options. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so before we get started with the video, I want to show you where you can get a little bit more information on the setup, more detailed information on the setup for the different options we'll be covering in today's video. So if you go to darkroomsupport.com and click on Darkroom Booth and then sharing email and SMS, we have the different options that you have here that go a little bit more in depth into how to set up each individual option. So otherwise this video would be hours long. So, first thing that we're going to want to do before we can really use any of these options is set them up in global settings. So if I go to global settings and then email and online accounts, I have a few different accounts added here. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend adding all of these. I use them for support reasons and also for demonstration. There's no reason to have 3 different email accounts added, but I just wanted to go over the different options. So they are kind of out of order. We're going to start with email first. The first one would be Darkroom email that already comes pre-configured. As long as you have a current support plan, this should work without any additional configuration. But if you go add account and then Darkroom email, it'll give you an option to type in your sender name and reply email address. That is really all the configuration you need for that. It's easy, and it's sending through our own server, which we maintain. So that would be for the very beginner basic user, my recommendation. The next option would be a free email account or a email account through a third party. Right here I have an example of Gmail, but this might be Yahoo Mail, Hotmail, those different types of email accounts. And we have guides for setting these up. Now this I would not recommend for pretty much all users. The reason for that is because it's third party that we have very little control over. They can change those requirements on how to log in, and we've seen this happen multiple times, that your account will work and then they'll change something, how the security settings, and then you have to reconfigure it to get it to work again, and you never know when that might happen. So this would be the least recommended option. I wouldn't use it. And the other issue with it is it's much more likely to be flagged for spam in email and SMS. And we haven't talked about photo to phone yet, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, the one I would recommend most is going to be Postmark. And the reason for that is you can use your own domain email address, and it has very good tracking and analytics on the Postmark end. It's a third-party paid service, but it works very well. It's actually what Darkroom email is powered by. So you would just log into your Postmark account. I have my sender name. It's using my my mail@eugenewise.com email address. So it's properly branded. It's not coming from a Gmail or Yahoo Mail account. It looks more professional and it works much better than the free options. So the next on the list is going to be photo to phone, or SMS. We have two different options. One of them I would recommend, the other one I would not. That would be, the one I would recommend is going to be Twilio. The login and setup can be a little bit complicated, but they are doing their best to ensure they're cracking down on spam SMS messages so that everything works as reliably as possible. So that's why there are those stricter sign up requirements than previously they had. But you can also use email to send SMS. It'll send to the phone number at the or at the carrier, but that has a much more likelihood of running into it and other issues, but being blocked specifically by the carrier. And one more small thing about SMS is when you use Event Gallery, it's going to send a link. So the file size requirements are kind of bypassed because it's sending a link to Event Gallery rather than trying to attach a file. So that's also helpful. That's Event Gallery. But this is the one option here that I'd recommend above all else. It is hosting, it's managed by Darkroom, so it will run as reliably as possible. If an update happens on one, it happens on the other at the same time to ensure that connection is maintained. So you can learn a little bit more about Event Gallery at eventgallery.com, but this is really what I would recommend above, and it almost can replace all these other options, and I'll show you how that's done in just a little bit. Last thing for sharing is going to be Dropbox. It can be helpful if you've run into an issue where it says your browser is not supported, you're on an older version, you'll want to update to the latest version, and you should be able to log in. But really, Event Gallery takes place of Dropbox, and you have much more options in it. And then remove.bg is not a sharing option, it's a AI-driven background removal. It's third-party background removal service. So we're not really going to cover this, but that is the different setup options. First thing I would do is basic users just to test out Darkroom email, but adding Event Gallery is probably the best thing you do. And if you want to look professional and send email, Postmark. Okay, so I have a event set up with using the default settings within Darkroom, or the coded in settings, and there's two different options here as well on sharing and maybe and customization, making it look a little bit more presentable. We're going to look at the more basic option first, which most of you are familiar with, and then we'll look at setting up the e-delivery prompt. So we'll go ahead and start the session. It should give me an option for email and photo to phone. I'm going to go ahead and click email. And when I click done, that will end the session. That's one limitation of this built-in method. And we'll also cover the slideshow that I have running here, because I would consider that an option for sharing. But we're going to go ahead and click exit. We can do the same thing and then select photo to phone. And here's where we have two different options. Once again, whether we're using Twilio or email. If you're using Twilio, I can type in a phone number. Puts a comma there so I can add another phone number, and I can send it to two different users on multiple carriers. And you can do essentially the same thing with email. As long as you put a comma to separate the email addresses, you can send it to multiple people. But when you use the email option, you then have to select the carrier, and you would see a little list pop up right here. So that means you can only send it to a single carrier. We'll go ahead and click done, and then it should send a message via Twilio to my phone. So as you can see, we didn't get a prompt. Well, I didn't have post to Dropbox checked, but we didn't get a prompt for post to event gallery or Dropbox, and those happen automatically in Upload. Before we move on to what I would recommend, it looks a little bit better and has a little bit more functionality. Let's look at some of the options within Photo Email. So here is where I would choose the service that I'm using to select. So if I have two different accounts added, maybe one's my email address and then another one's my client's email address, so they're sending directly from their email account that they've set up. You can have multiple, and you just select which account it's using to send the email. You can also update the email message here. Here's plain text and then HTML if you wish. And there's the subject line. Here I have it set to prompt for the email address, which is the default setting. And then I also have a BCC set for my email address, so I'm receiving an email. And where this is helpful is, let's say somebody types in their email address wrong, they click done, it ends a session, and they realize that they've made a typo. You've received the same email, and you can forward it from your phone if that happens. So that's not a bad idea, and it's also a good way to make sure everything's running properly. Here you can also enable animations or change out the template. So let's say this works best for a 4x6, but for the digital file I want it to be a square image. I can then replace the template. You don't have to choose the same template here as you have here. It'll automatically use this if no template's selected. And then you also have the option to enable animations, which would be your GIF files if you want. And you should see in the image size, which is pretty self-explanatory. You should see very similar options in Photo to Phone. Image size, template, enable animations. But right here we have an option that says Twilio. And a lot of people get a little bit confused that you're not able to edit that, or the drop down menu doesn't work. If Twilio is added, it will automatically use Twilio. If Twilio is not added, it will default to email, which once again I don't recommend, but it will default to email, and it'll still say Twilio. You can't change that. But that's just something to remember. And then you have that same message option right there. So we'll click OK. We'll look at Dropbox, but we're not really using it, but it's pretty basic. You can add in the subfolder structure here if you wanted to control the output on your Dropbox account. Then you also have file, size, template, and animations available. But the main thing with Dropbox is you can build a folder structure here, and you just type in the folder / and then the next folder name, and it would build that structure. Similar to what you would see if you went into your file browser. And then Event Gallery. Once again, my favorite. We have this event uploading to upload test. I'm gonna just uncheck that and then recheck it. It'll automatically choose the event name, and this option right here is actually really important. If you check it, it will use this date. So if you're testing out an event before the event to make sure everything's working, go ahead and check it and set the date for the correct date. If you do not check this option, it'll automatically create a new gallery for each new day. So when one thing works and then it's not checked, it'll create a new gallery, and everything might not be linked the same way, or you might get duplication that you don't necessarily want. So good idea to check that option. And the if you want to print out a link to that gallery, you can click Get Link, open a page, and then you can print it to a document printer, and then they can scan it and visit the gallery, browse through the different images from that event. This is a very easy setup. You can print multiple copies and have them different locations. So after the event, they don't have to type anything in. It doesn't slow down the gallery or slow down the booth process. They take their pictures and then they move on, take a picture with the phone and or scan the code with their phone, and then they can access the gallery. This is a very easy and basic setup, and I would definitely recommend this type of setup. I'm going to show you a different option in just a moment that I would recommend a little bit higher, but I do want to say that is a very usable setup. So here I have a different template being applied. Once again, if I wanted to change the template, this template right here actually has a QR code that we'll talk about in one moment as another sharing option, but this one does not. So that's the reason for having a different one that uploads to Event Gallery. There's no reason to have a code that links to the same image you're already looking at. And then we have enable animations. We have the file size options. Right here we have also upload original images. So that would upload not only the output image but also the originals. So that's a good thing to have checked. And then we have this option, tag uploads by recipient. So those images are tagged, so whenever they click on their print, it also shows the original images together, and it's easier to navigate and find their images, both the output and the originals. So that's a good option to check. Go ahead and click OK. And then these options right here aren't really that helpful. They probably should be merged down and just turned into an option within photo to email, photo to phone. But essentially what it's going to do is going to send it either by email or by phone, and then it will have a message to download the image, and then you click the link to open the application. If you're Instagram or Twitter user or Snapchat user, you already know how to use the app, so just downloading the image is already what they're doing. So these are not as useful as they might look. It does not post directly to those accounts because that is not allowed from a third-party app. So they would actually have to download it anyway to their phone to upload it. Before we get to this QR code, it'll make a little bit more sense if we look at this event. And it looks identical, but there's a couple things that have changed. First off, the screen template has a download code here. We have different sharing options, including print, SMS, email, and then essentially a done or a finished button. Another thing that I have added before we get into this, I just want to briefly show you, is a slideshow added. And I have a template that actually has that same downloadable QR code within this slideshow. So if you're using a slideshow, you can add a code. So let's say you're at an event and you want people to share images amongst each other. The images would upload, let's say from a previous session, and one of their friends comes by, sees the slideshow image, they can then scan that image from the code and then be able to access it and download it if you wanted to share images like that. Some people might not appreciate that much shareability, but I wanted to show you that as an option. It's just using a slideshow template. You'll be able to see it in just a moment, but I will show you the template I'm talking about. Right here, it has a logo, it has an image, and then it has downloadable QR code link. And this would replace the output, this image on the slideshow. So let's get started on this one and just see some of the differences here. And you can see there is an image that was captured, and if you scan this code, it will download an image from the slideshow. And you can have the slideshow playing on a separate monitor, or in this case it's in a tracked mode. So we'll start the session, and see the differences in how this responds. And then we'll go a little bit more in depth on how to set it up. So here we have the download code. Somebody can scan that and download their image. If they want, they can click print. It would then print out the image. This is a good way to enable a print opt-in or opt-out option. If they want to send it to via SMS, and what's really neat about this, they don't have to enter in a another phone number there. They can click done and then click this option again and enter a different phone number. So that is real helpful. Or if somebody doesn't want to put in their phone number, they'd prefer to use email, it'll allow you to continue clicking these options, including print, for multiple people from a session. Now, one thing I just want to cover real quick, just because somebody might see this and say, hey, that doesn't look the same as the original image that was captured. This is a vertical template and the feed was a horizontal. Now I took a little bit too long there, but in that case I would have clicked that done button and it would have closed the session, but there is a timeline. I just kept adding and talking. So we'll do that one more time just so you can see how that works, and you can hear my phone now buzzing. So then you would then scan or click your buttons and then click done, and it would close the session. That's a small difference in the workflow or how it performs for using the e-delivery prompt. It's a little bit easier for multiple people within a session to share with themselves. But what's nice about this option is if you want, you don't have to add these buttons. You'll want to still enable email and photo to phone, but if you don't want people to offer them or be able to access them, just don't put them in. You can leave these out, and then they can just download or print and then click done when they're finished. This is just showing you that you can do all of them, but if you don't want to, just leave those options out in your screen template. Okay, so we're getting near the end. I appreciate you sticking with me if you've made it this far and haven't been overwhelmed. Let's look at that screen template to see how that's all configured just briefly, and I have a video that goes much more in depth in this type of setup, but specifically my start button, this should make sense for most users. It's set to show during startup and it has a command to start session. Now the print template, it's set for custom e-delivery and send to print. The SMS is set for custom e-delivery, so it's only going to show during that custom e-delivery prompt, and when you have that added, it would then override the built-in. Otherwise, if you do not have this option added, it would not override, and it would just display. So you have to have something added in custom e-delivery to enable the prompt. You'll want to make sure you add a done button that allows you to actually close the session so that it's ready for the next user. So we print, SMS, email set up the same way. You just choose send an email. This option right here is just a QR code set for, it's set for custom. I found this works a little bit better for me, but end instructions and custom delivery prompt. So it's going to last just a little bit longer, but usually that helps the actual code show up a little bit, show up and be more accurate. I'm not sure why that is, but that's just something that I've learned. End instructions and custom e-delivery prompt. And the code I'm using to generate that code is photo1 or %photo1 dot URL If you wanted to just go to the gallery, I believe you can actually do %gallery %, I think is the other code. Those two options are in the detailed instructions for the custom e-delivery prompt with QR code sharing via QR code. And then this little output, it's kind of hard to see because I have the live view right here and then I have this output menu right on top of it. But this is what shows the actual output, what's going to print out in the screen. So click add and then select output, and that's where you get this. I think typically it's wide. You can just resize it to match the size and the shape of your output template. So that is the screen template. And what I would really recommend for presentation, it is a little bit more difficult to set up than this one that just has a start button and uses the hard-coded stuff. But there's a guide that will walk you through this whole process, so if that's something you want. And the reason why I said earlier that event gallery, having an event gallery could almost replace all the other options, and I kind of went over this just a little bit. Have an option to print, so if they don't need to print, they don't have to, but the option is still there, and then they can download it. It goes from event gallery, and then I don't have to worry about any SMS email issues. And the if for some reason there's any issues, the print template also has that same code on it. So if there's internet issues, they get a print, they take it with them, and then they can scan that code later after the images have been uploaded. So that's a good backup, having that download link on the print. I think that is everything. If you want to learn more about something, once again, go to darkroomsupport.com and then click on booth and then sharing, and under that menu you should see the different options and with more detailed instructions for each setup. But I appreciate you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Thanks again for watching. Here are a couple of videos that YouTube thinks that you might enjoy. Be sure to like, subscribe, but more importantly, if there's something you want to learn a little bit more about, comment below this video and I'll do my best to add it as a future video. I'll see you in the next one.